Oh, welcome back.
Hey,
Oh my gosh.
Stacy, so good to see you.
Hello. Hello. So lovely to be back and embarking on another conversation. And we were just visiting and we felt like we wanted to start just bringing in a conversation about spirituality and how it comes in and impacts and whatnot, our relationships. We're all in many relationships likely with people, and it might be friendships, family members, our direct partner or partners. And so this piece about where we're at in our spiritual journey, and we've been talking about how it's so very important to be connecting and, if needed, learning to love ourselves for all that we are. And then we can just share, like people will feel that energy. And it doesn't mean that they're going to get it or begin to believe what we believe and things like that, but that I think will probably have many aspects that, that come into this, that, and that's not the point, right? Is there are challenges and there are wonderful, expansive, beautiful experiences that happen from our getting connected and opening up within our spirituality, whatever that means to us. And but then talk about this, relationship piece. And so I'll hand it over to you so you can begin and we'll just have our conversation.
Thanks so much, Stacy. Yeah. Relationships in and of themselves are so difficult, right? Like they're work. Um, every relationship, and like you mentioned, friendships, our relationships with our parents, relationships with our children, relationships with a partner. Relationships are difficult, right? Because we're all in unique individuals. And, I specifically think about as we have a personal relationship with a partner, right? And when we first align and we first get together, right, as a partnership, um, we have matched because we're kind of on the same, plane. We're kind of where we are in the journey, and it's similar because if we are terribly not similar, it doesn't, we're not attracted to that, right? Like, so we get brought into this partnership, and then as we continue along in the journey, sometimes um, one or the other begins to grow.
Mhm.
And I'm speaking in spirituality. Doesn't mean that the other person's not growing. I don't mean it that way. But and we start to become in a place where we're learning to love ourselves. We're learning to really go in for what we need, and it changes the dynamic of the relationship, right? And one of the things that I think is so important now, I absolutely would love to see every relationship grow and develop and move along together and all of this happen
Mhm.
together at once. But that doesn't always happen.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important for us to know that sometimes some of our friendships, partnerships, relationships may be time limited because that person was meant to be along for part of the journey,
Mhm.
but weren't meant to be along for the entire journey. And
Mhm.
that's okay too, because we can still love people.
Yes.
We can still show kindness and compassion, but
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that we're going in the same direction.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like I said, relationships are complicated. And when we deviate on our journeys, um, it may not be meant for us to be on the same path anymore.
Mhm.
Kind of like when a tree loses its leaves right
Mhm.
in the fall,
Mhm.
because those leaves are no longer providing nutrition for the tree, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's important that we don't, it's kind of that old thing that I used to talk about, don't keep knocking on a door that won't open for us, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's important to know that we can love and cherish and honor every relationship, but it doesn't mean we continue on the same path. Now, again, I'm not saying, that relationships should blow up or not be together. But I do think ultimately we need to realize that not every relationship is supposed to be for a lifetime. Every relationship we do learn and develop and have growth and lessons and blessings in
Mhm.
every relationship. I don't care what the relationship is, even if it's a toxic relationship. There are lessons and there are blessings in that relationship.
Mhm.
But I think we just have to be open to um, that. Not everybody's going to come along for our entire journey.
Mhm.
And I would really say that, I've worked with a lot of people. And one of the hardest things when it comes to relationships, I think, when we begin to outgrow somebody, really is when a child is outgrowing spiritually their parents,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
That is
Mhm.
a really hard
Mhm.
dynamic,
For sure.
um, because it almost feels like you flip roles, right? Like,
Yes.
and obviously, we're not going to walk away from our parent. Well, as long as it's not abusive and toxic, like those kind of
Right.
things. But we're not
Yes.
going to walk away from our parents if we outgrow them. Um, but the dynamics shift. So
Mhm.
we have to, I think it all goes back to that self love, right?
Yeah.
Like that self love,
Mhm.
because when we are doing that, we are teaching other people how to love us. And
Mhm.
even if our dynamics shift and we're still in some kind of relationship that, um, because it's a parent or it's a child or it's even if it's a partner, like, um, we have to pivot in the way that we are interacting in that relationship.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
we also have to honor that they may not be open
Right.
to what we are doing in our journey.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's about choosing that I'm going to go ahead and fully love myself and have this higher level of consciousness. And it's
Mhm.
okay that somebody around me isn't doing the same thing. But I'm gonna
Right.
volley back to you because I could keep going.
Wonderful. Right? Oh, there's so much here. I so much I could respond to, but what's really resonating right now is that what we truly desire in why we want what we want. And in this example, more, I mean, connection, love, and I'll do a little bit of sharing, not a long story, but like some aspects of how it can feel very lonely when, and I can speak for myself, my awakening journey, which when we're awakening, coming into another, it's not even a level, but a resonance that I'm so much more than who I thought I was, because I'm beyond my mind and my thoughts and what I do as a physical human, and then more heart connected. And then many relationships in my life, I have some friends I no longer have, just because part of it was like, oh, I wasn't holding the healthiest boundaries for myself or whatever. And then people, like you said, sometimes people are in our lives, not for very long, or they might be, but they may not be forever, and whatnot. But even like in the family relationships, our parents, you know, like I don't really feel fully understood by like my dad. And that can hurt, you know, and you feel like, and I know enough not to take it personal with regard to it's nothing to do with me that he doesn't care enough to try to whatever, but it's brought me into more love and compassion within all that I am. So that when I am going to, let's say, talk to him, it's like I'm not going to go bring in a conversation that might be out on Mars for him, because
Mhm,
I have other people like Terry and other beautiful humans and even close friends now that if I want to have a conversation or whatever it is, it's not just about a topic and I want to talk about this all day. It's who I am being now,
mhm,
you know? And so topics that I used to get into don't really mean as much to me anymore. Like I'm just not focused on problems all the time. And like that's fine. Like people can bring that in. But instead, I just come in with the intention of lovingness and compassion. And wherever that person's at,
mhm,
and then it doesn't, if I'm honest with myself, and I am these days, it doesn't feel to that fully like fulfilling level where I feel so warm and fuzzy. but that's okay because we do grow and change. And like when you said, a child outgrowing or like we, it's really common that so many of us, and people have used different terms over the years. I'm not into labels or it just makes a point here. People that feel they're more sensitive, empathic, all of that. We are like the only one often in our family that kind of is the essence of that. The rest of the family often doesn't get it. And it's really challenging to grow within that. But then now, as we bring into our conversations, this is all for us. It's not happening to us, you know. Yep, really, really challenging when it's abusive and things like that. And I'm not speaking to that directly right now. But everything, like you said, everything does have aspects
Mhm.
that are helpful, honoring, and no matter what, it is facilitating our growth and expansion as spiritual beings and humans. So the more we honor ourselves and, we want to be more authentically all that we are. And again, I can speak from personal experience that sometimes it feels like I can't quite put myself out there in a way I might want to in any given moment with someone because I don't really feel like they're going to get it. And I just kind of make a discernment about, like, and I'll make one more reference and I'll pass it to you. My husband, like, we're in different just places, not higher, lower, better, worse. But what it's interesting is I do feel safe and more free to share where I'm at. I was doing the thing where I felt like I was preaching a little bit much to him, and I wasn't honoring just who he was. And I realized it's not for me to tell him like what he should focus on. So totally backed off on that. And but I'm still able to speak about what's resonating for me, and he can either comment or not. And more and more he is starting to see a bigger picture of the world that when I stopped trying to convince him or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, eh, yeah. So again, like people probably are noticing, we have this theme of come back into yourself and love yourself, emanate that, love others. And so it really comes down to like some acceptance and just honoring of
Mhm.
all. And I'll pass it back to you. Just beautiful
You
conversation.
know, I really, um, we know that I get like these little, oh, trigger, I have something, right? And as you were talking, like I'm reminded of our soul contracts, that
Mm,
we did that episode. And, I think one of the things that's really important to point out at this particular moment is that we may have done a whole episode on something, but there is lots of places where things tie in. And this is a place where I think it's important to kind of take a step back and talk about the soul contracts for just a minute. I'm not going to go into a whole nother thing about that. But one of the things with our soul contracts, if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to that episode. But
mhm,
when we make our contract, we literally are writing in our relationships
mhm,
in that contract, right? And again, I really want you to listen to that episode if you haven't heard it, because
mhm,
it's got a lot more detail, but it doesn't take away our free will to
mhm,
choose.
mhm,
But we write in the relationships for our journey, our learning, and our growth.
mhm,
Now, the other thing that I've talked about, when it came to soul contracts is, you know, I even talked about that I was sexually abused as a child. And I talked about that, I chose that relationship and that before I came here because it was very purposeful.
mhm,
My point is that all of your relationships are in some way contributing to what you're here for.
mhm,
All of them. And even those that hurt us, I mean, obviously, being sexually abused as a child was very hurtful, but it was very purposeful in this journey for me.
mhm.
And when we talk about relationship dynamics, gosh, there's just
Yeah.
so much to that, right? Like we could go on forever about relationship dynamics, but
Mhm,
I think the bottom line base important thing to remember is that nothing is a mistake.
Mhm.
We really did choose this relationship to teach us something, to grow us, to develop into a new place. So never look at anything as a mistake, even if it is that a relationship is evolving, changing, and no more, right? Um, we are so blessed from every relationship, no matter what that relationship is. Um,
Mhm.
and I think it's important to say that because, every relationship helps us as long as we're open to it, right?
Mhm. Sure, exactly.
Helps us see something, develop something, grow from there.
Mhm.
As long as we're willing to have that reflection for self, that
Mhm.
reflection on what is it that I need to know from this.
Mhm.
Because we could sit here for 100 years explaining every different dynamic and what even in my own life, why would I have chosen that, but there was a purpose, and those are the things specifically for me. I just want to point out, in relationships that may not work out, right? Like,
Mhm.
that may be hurtful,
Mhm.
really going internally and saying, okay, what did I learn from this? Where did I grow from this?
Mhm.
What can I take with me that's going to serve me? And what can I leave that's no longer going to serve me? Because, we don't want to keep carrying the hurt forward,
Mhm.
but there is something in that relationship that was very purposeful, even if it was a hurtful relationship.
Mhm.
On the flip side of that, we have also beautiful lifelong relationships that it's like we feel like we found our soulmate. And guys, I'm not referring to partnerships in that, your soulmates can be your friends. It doesn't have to be your partnership, spouse, whatever. Your soulmates, we have multiple of them across our lifetime. And even sometimes our soulmates, like, they enter out of our journey before our journey's over, and that can happen too.
Mhm.
But we are so grateful for those connections.
Mhm.
It's kind gosh, I feel like I'm jumping all over the place, but I this
Mhm.
just kind of downloaded, and when I've talked about spirit guides in some previous episodes, I said we really have one, sometimes two main spirit guides that are with us from the beginning of the journey to the end of the journey. But then we have lots of other spirit guides that maybe one just comes in for literally a 10-minute hurrah for something, right? It's the same thing about human relationships. It's the same thing, because they're there to help us through something.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and I really want to say something. When I was, gosh, I guess I was maybe 19, maybe 19. Um, I was in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and I rented a house from this woman who, when I walked into the house, um, it was a very old house, but there was 4 bedrooms, but 2 of the bedrooms, you had to walk through the 3rd bedroom into the 4th bedroom. Like, so you had to walk through it. So it wasn't really, in my opinion, a 4th bedroom, right? Because you had to walk through that bedroom into that back bedroom. And when she was showing me this house, I got into the 3rd bedroom and I kind of felt like I couldn't breathe. And then I got into the 4th bedroom and I really like felt like I was being choked, and had to go outside, right? And I tell this part of the story because this is how me and this woman connected, right?
Mhm.
So we got outside and she was looking at me like, and she said, "How did you know?" And I said, "What do you mean, how did I know?" And she said, "There was a baby that choked in the back bedroom." And I said, "Well, I didn't know." I said, "But I absolutely felt it, right? I could feel that residual energy that was there." I tell this little short story because it's about the connection that I made with this woman. Now,
Mm,
again, I was only like 19 years old. This woman was probably in her late 30s, maybe early 40s, but I felt like I had met
mm,
like someone that was so supposed to be on my journey. I felt so connected to this woman.
mm,
Um, I mean, like she had never not been there in my life,
mm.
right? That's how connected I felt to this woman. But it literally only lasted 9 months.
Uh-huh.
Like that was it. Like, and then we went our, like I moved out of that house, and we never spoke again. Of course, this is back before there was really cell phones and stuff,
Uh-huh. Right.
but,
Right.
but that's my whole point to that story is these intense connections that we can make in life, and they
Mhm.
might just be for a really short period. And for me, like it almost, I don't, obviously can't speak for her. I don't know what it was for her, but for me, it was almost like this mothering energy that I was so far physically away from where my mother was. And again, we're talking mid 1990s. There wasn't all of this stuff to connect. There wasn't this internet. I mean, there wasn't any of this stuff.
Right.
And she made me feel like I was just enveloped in this motherly figure.
Mm,
And I will always look back on that with such fondness and so much love and so much just envelopment. But
mm,
I've never talked to the woman again, like
mhm,
ever.
mhm,
So sometimes it's just for something we need
mhm,
in at
mhm.
that time, no matter how intense the connection is. And I really just, it's funny, I have not thought of that story in many, many, many years.
Uh,
Stacey, I know you've never heard that story. Like
no.
I have not thought of that story in many, many years, but it literally popped in, and I really had to get it out because I feel like it was purposeful. Somebody needed to hear
Yes.
that, you know, it's okay that when we move forward, right? And um, but now we have internet, we have cell phones, so don't
Yes.
lose those really intense connections. But really, I'm gonna pass it back to you. I kind of went veered off a
Beautiful.
little
That's
bit, but
just beautiful. I just what I love about just this organic,
yeah,
conversation because honoring whatever is coming in, our memories, our people,
yeah,
and when we are struggling and hurting, let's say, in regard to relationships not being what we'd really like them to be or losing one or whatever it is, I hope that whatever you get out of this conversation, that, again, when we bring in, as we are, spirituality, it's a big, big, big picture. None of us are alone in this physical experience we're having as a human. We are not alone. We can feel alone. We can feel like a loss of a relationship means something not great about us or whatever, right? Whatever the stories that
hmm
just parts of us, those doubtful parts tell us. It's And it's also, of course, not about, on the flip side, I'll mention, because I don't think we've said this yet in this conversation, but not that there was a should, but it's coming in. So that it's not about just going to the opposite extreme of, well, just make it all about big picture. So then we don't really get into the full whatever loving presence of self and others, because it can be like a bypassing, things like that. And that's also part of the human experience. And if it happens and it's meant for you, and it'll be helpful in some way too. But just there's, like we said in the beginning of this, like there's a lot of nuances with this, but if we just remember coming back home to self, and sometimes we can be in a place of not really resonating. Like there might be people listening to this and go, oh, whatever, like it's not resonating.
hmm
Totally okay.
yeah,
We speak from, like, when you share an experience, I'm sharing whatever, um, is that we're just sharing some of what we might have experienced, um, wisdom or whatever it is. These are not facts. They're just conversations we're having that are very meaningful for us.
Mhm.
But it's just, over the years, I can say that I've learned so much from this piece about, like, who am I really? What's this all really about? And when I started on that journey, I mean, every time I lose a relationship, I mean, like I take it because I mean, people really matter to me, and
Yeah.
I do often so love openly. And when they end, it can feel like, oh no, what did I do wrong, or whatever that, again, that dialogue. But gosh, when I look back now, every relationship, oh my gosh, it's such had a purpose. And then it's also, I feel so grateful that I can be in a place now where it's not like, oh, wish I never would have met you, and that really hurt. Like,
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
we go through that. But now I'm like, I grew so much.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, it really blows me away, and how beautiful it is. So whatever resonates from this conversation for people, and I
Mhm.
love that you shared that story. It's just so beautiful. And there's sayings, people come into our life for a reason, a season, and there's like more to that. I kind of looked that up one of these times because I'll make reference to it. I'm like, I can't remember what else was in that, but really it's just beautiful. And feel deeply, love deeply,
Mhm.
honor
Yeah.
your journey, and you're honoring others as well. It's so beautiful. Anything else that you would like to say before we move to
Yeah.
closure?
Well, I just, um, I think when we live from this place of really self reflection, going in self, loving self, um, that it does, how before we were really living in that, um, we might be afraid to love and afraid to give love after being hurt or
Mhm.
whatnot. And I think when we're truly, now again, nothing is ever 100%, but when we're really truly living in this self love, this self comfort, this self development, self reflection, um, I think that it allows us to experience a hurt of a loss of a relationship, but then to still give as much love in the
Yes.
next relationship as we did in
Mhm.
that relationship. Because when we really, really understand that everything has a purpose,
Mhm.
then we don't wall up. We don't build that wall, construct that wall, because we know everything is for us,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Everything,
Mhm.
even in the pain. Uh,
Yes.
we we are having this human experience to feel
Mhm.
all of the feelings. And we're really supposed to feel them. We're really supposed to go through them.
Mhm.
And, just because somebody over here hurt me, it
Mhm.
should never minimize how much I love you, Stacy. Like, and how much I allow that relationship. Because as excited as we are about what we're doing and all of this, who knows? 5 years from now, could look completely different. I hope not, but it could. And
Right.
because we're also human. We're not just spiritual beings, right? We're human and
Yes.
we have all those dynamics. And
Mhm.
so I think that really being invested and connected in those relationships, no
Mhm.
matter what we've already experienced or we're going to experience,
Yes.
it's the only way that we can fully receive
Mhm.
all the love and the compassion and the blessings that
Mhm.
we are meant to receive.
Yes. Beautifully said. Yes. Thank you so much. This
Yeah.
is lovely conversation.
It always is. I
Always
love being here with you. And,
to.
you
Yeah.
know, people, just for everybody listening, just so you know, like, you don't have to be in the same room with somebody
Right.
to be able to share energy with that person. And, Stacy and I, no matter what we've gone through during the week, like, this is really like some of our highest place when we're here talking and sharing with you guys.
Mhm.
And we just are so grateful. We are so grateful, because this allows us to be able to connect
Mhm.
at such a high level
Oh,
and really heal anything that has happened.
so much. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, guys, and
Thank you.
we'll see you soon.
All right. Bye bye for now.